And we are live with Coach Marcus Herford of the Kiel Baltic Hurricanes. He is also going to be coming to the Breakthrough Series camp in London later this fall in October. Coach Herford, thanks for being on the show.
Wow, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
No doubt, no doubt. So exciting time for you. You just took down Dresden to get the number 2 seed in the GFL North. You got the first round of the playoffs next week against Marburg. What's the team atmosphere like right now? How are you guys prepping, and what's going on in Kiel?
Man, pretty exciting. You know, obviously when you're able to secure another home field game for not only your fans but for your team after working so hard, man, it's definitely an exciting time, man, for everybody involved. Obviously, right now, with the cancellation of our game a couple of weeks ago, or the reschedule, we're in the midst of having to kind of prepare for Hamburg, as well as try to maybe mix in a little Marburg if we can. And so that's kind of the battle we're facing right now. But, I mean, besides that, it's an exciting time right now, and we can't wait to get rolling.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, and so, you know, talk about what are the keys to victory against Marburg and really for you guys to win the championship. You've got an excellent running game. You call the plays, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, what's it going to take for you guys to go all the way?
Well, man, that's a couple of things. Number one, you know, obviously the saying is defense wins championships. So that's what it starts with. Our defense being sound, which, you know, we got an outstanding defensive coordinator, Coach Malik Jackson, who's came here and done an awesome job with the guys. So as long as they go out there, man, and do what I know what they're capable of, it makes it obviously easier on us. You know, one of the biggest things offensively is, like you did state, you know, running the ball. You know, being able to run the ball effectively sets up our whole offense in itself. So as long as we can go out there and execute, you know, and worry about the things we have to on our end, it can be a pretty special run going forward.
Well, and talk about your monster running back. It seems like he can't be stopped, man. What is he, 220, 6'2"?
Well, now he's not 6'2". No, he'd probably be happy you said that, though. But I'll tell you what, man, Chris is an outstanding, number one person to work with. He's extremely smart guy, which makes it easier on me as a play caller. There's things on the field that he sees, relays it, and we work very well together. You know, getting him last year here was a no-brainer once I saw that he was available. And I tell you what, I mean, you guys have kind of seen a glimpse of what he's capable of doing, and still it's a lot of other things that really hasn't been seen yet. So, man, he's an outstanding, you know, like I said, player, but a person more than anything. You know, out when you're doing this thing in Europe, you know, making sure you have the right imports is so key, you know, and having a guy like that here has been outstanding for not only me, but the organization.
Absolutely. And you touched on it right there. You're having the right imports with the right mindset, with the right work ethic. You know, in the past, have you had to deal with any imports that, you know, didn't really mold with the team? And if so, how did that kind of play out? I mean, I've had experiences where we've had imports or teammates or even coaches that just didn't blend well with the chemistry of the team, and that showed on the field. You know, we didn't win championships with those teams. Well, what are your thoughts there?
Man, I'll tell you what, we are extremely fortunate, man, to have a great group of imports, every last one of them. I was very fortunate to be at previous schools where 4 of those guys I coached. So that made it a lot easier for the transition. I knew the type of guys they were, and that's why I wanted them here. You know, so in addition to Josh and Villasini, which I'm sure you know who Villasini is, as well as my man Anthony Bass, man, those guys were outstanding additions this year. They fit what we were about here, and honestly, man, we're very fortunate not to have had those problems with our imports. I mean, they came here. I'm sure you've seen the type of imports that, like, especially skill guys, they don't want to do special teams. They just want to do their position, do their thing, don't want to hang out. they're the complete opposite of that, man. So it definitely helps me, especially when I'm trying to preach team, family, that those guys are equally as they are. You know, they all came here with the same mindset, and that's to win a championship. So it definitely helps push the thought of family, of making things easier for me as a coach.
Absolutely. Well, and let's talk on the German players then for now. You know, and how they've kind of helped elevate the Americans, and you know, really what's the community of American football like in Kiel? You know, do you have community support? You know, do you guys get a ton of fans on game day? Kind of just talk about the overall environment of the German players and the German atmosphere.
Man, I'll tell you what, I've said it, and I really stand strong on it. I feel like we have the best fan support in Europe. And I haven't seen a lot of other places, but from the places I've seen and the way our fans are here, man, the way those guys, they come out and they travel well when they come to our games. We have extremely great support there. And it makes it easier on you to go out as a player. I know when you was playing, it's just having those fans on your side and cheering you on, and when it seemed like the game might be lopsided or down, just hearing those people picking you up just gives you that extra boost, man. And that's what we're fortunate to have here in Kiel, man. It's an outstanding fan support group. And I tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. They get after it. They really do. I'm glad I'm not on the other side of the field going against those fans, because you know, they do an outstanding job just creating a great atmosphere for our guys, and that's why it was so important, you know, especially once we saw we were in contention to get that number 2 seed, to secure that extra home game, because they deserve it hands down. Like I said, they travel well, and why not give them what they deserve? And the atmosphere here, and I can tell you, is great. This is outstanding.
Mm-hmm. And talk about some of your top German players. You know, who are kind of your standout guys that are helping you push forward on both offense and defense?
Man, I tell you what, first thing jumps out obviously is Tiadric Hansen, you know, Aaron Bodu. Those guys defensively, man, are pretty dominant. You know, we kind of started off a little shaky with those guys due to injury, but once they came back, man, they really picked it up and really do an outstanding job for us. Also defensively, Jan Abrahamsen. You know, last game he had 2 interceptions, and he was one of our German team leaders as far as making it to the national team, and did an outstanding job. You know, and he's done great for us. Moritz Meis, another guy that made the national team. So those guys, you know, have been outstanding for us and have been here a while. Especially Jan. Moritz has only been here 2 years and have been impact players. You know, offensively, man, I could probably mention the whole line. You know, they're the reason why our offense has done what it has this year. You know, every last one of those guys are German guys, and outstanding guys first. And it starts with the Coach Whelan, Coach Nick Whelan. I can tell you now, if it wasn't for him, I honestly don't know where our running game would be when it comes to getting those guys in the right positions technically, and really being able to perform the schemes and things I brought here. He does an excellent job with those guys. And another guy I can mention off top of Diego Sanchez, you know, Kwame Afari, who I'm sure a lot of people saw in the national games, like just completely blow up. Unfortunately, he messed his hamstring up, but he will be back soon as well. So another great weapon for us.
And we lost Coach Herford for the time being, but until he jumps back on, if he jumps back on, Coach Herford graduated from the University of Kansas. He played for the Kansas Jayhawks. Was a return specialist for them, receiver. Many people don't know this, but he did go on to play for the Green Bay Blizzard, an IFL team. Then he went to Turkey and played for the Yeditepe Eagles, and then went to France and played for the I'm going to mess this up, but I can't even say it. Troy, I believe, is the city. But then he went on to be a graduate assistant at Valdosta State. He helped them to win a national championship in 2012. He then went on to coach wide receivers at Oklahoma State Panhandle. And then, Coach, I kind of filling him in on your history as we lost you there for a second. Where did you head after Oklahoma State Panhandle?
Actually, after Panhandle State, that's when I went to Kentucky Wesleyan. That's where I took the co-offensive coordinator position there as the pass game coordinator, as well as the special teams coordinator. That was my job after that, and that's where I met Xavier Mitchell, who I'm sure a lot of the league knows about. He's an outstanding player / outstanding guy, and that's why he was not even a thought to get him out here. So Kentucky Western was my next stop after that.
And so when you got done with Kentucky Western, you got over to was it straight to Kiel from there?
It was straight to Kiel from there after one season there. I mean, my time there, the short time I had, was outstanding. I was fortunate to coach. I don't know if many have heard of him, but Keelan Cole, who's now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He just made the 53-man roster. And the year I was there, he put up 23 touchdowns, over 1,700 yards, just some monster numbers. And just being able to work with him and Xavier, who were, even before I came the year before, the top duo in all of the nation as far as production. So it made my job easier, and my time there was outstanding. But coming here, has been awesome so far.
Well, and so did you bring the offense from Kentucky Western that you were running there to Kiel? Kind of, it seems like you guys are run first to open up the pass and more of a power game. Or what offense do you run, to clarify, and did you bring it from Kentucky Western?
I'll be honest with you, man. I tell everybody who asks me a question of what type of offense I run, like really, it's like a pistol spread. It's a pistol spread, but extremely, I don't even know how to explain it, man, because we do so much, and it all depends on the personnel that you're able to work with. I'm very fortunate to have had a great recruiting season here. Which allowed me to fill in some gaps to be able to do literally every personnel you can think of, and that's what makes our offense, pretty sound this year. Is just the fact of being able to do so much with it, but still, be effective. It's not too much, and so yes, a lot of what I did at Wesleyan is what I brought here from a pass game standpoint. Run game has just been, from over the years, some of the coaches I've been a part of, some of the systems, kind of putting some of the stuff I like with some tweaks of my own. And, it's came together well. What's funny is I'm an ex-receiver, ex-quarterback. I was a pass-first guy until I got Christopher McClendon on my team and an old line like that. So it changed my whole mindset of how I wanted to run offense. And the flip part is, I tell everybody, I'm 20% run, 20% pass, and 60% whatever works that game. So it's not just a percentage of what you're doing. So it's take what they give you, man, and it's worked so far.
Well, first off, I think the coaches of the UK are super excited to hear about your spread offense, how you implement it, how you kind of critique it for your personnel. And I think that's the difference between okay coaches and great coaches, is being able to adjust to personnel. And I think that's something that needs to be taught more efficiently in Europe. Is just because a spread offense is sexy, you may have a stout offensive line that can pound the ball. It doesn't make sense. Do you see a lot of that in Europe from your past experience of coaches not taking advantage of their personnel?
Absolutely. That is a big issue, I feel like, in certain areas. Not to mention any teams or organizations, but if coaches understood from that aspect that just because that's what your offense has been in the past, if it doesn't fit your personnel of guys that you have, most often it's not going to work well. It's not going to be very sound. And so that was one of the biggest things when I came here is kind of seeing what I had to work with and how it was going to mold around what I do well, but also just making sure it fit, you know. So for instance, this year, I'm sure some people saw some of the things that happened against the Rebels our first game, where we rushed for almost 500 yards and threw for like maybe 6 yards or something. You know, our quarterback was hurt and you know, was kind of giving us some time to heal. So I knew I had to adjust. I had to adjust and go to a different style of offense, but that fit what we were able to do. And honestly, that's where the success of that day came from, is just an understanding that, okay, just because we're completely spread, basically, doesn't mean I have to stay that way if it's not going to be effective for us. So that's one of the things I can say, and some of the things I'll talk about in those clinics is, you know, you have to understand your personnel, how to use them correctly, and just make sure you're not so strong-headed as a coach that you're not willing to adapt and adjust based on your personnel and what you have.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And Coach Herford, talk about just football in Germany, football in Europe as a whole. You know, since you got over there several years ago to now, talk about the growth that you've seen in just the level of play from years from even just 3 years.
Man, it's absolutely outstanding here in the German Football League. You know, like you stated, I played in France and I also played in Istanbul, Turkey. And what's crazy is when people hear Istanbul, Turkey, they're like, is there actually good football out there? And funny part, it actually was. It was some teams that were very competitive. One of the teams I'm sure people know about is Coach Ram, who's been one of the top teams in Europe for a little bit now. So there's an extreme amount of talent out there that a lot of people don't know about, you know. And in the German Football League, man, just speaking from the north alone, you know, it is an extremely competitive league, you know, and what helps that is a lot of good coaches that are in place, you know, making sure that these teams are running functionally and making the best of the players that they have. Because obviously some people may not know, and might do, the rule of having 2 Americans on the field at a time. You know, if you come from the States and you're used to 11 Americans out there and have to adjust to having 9, I mean, you really got to make sure attention to detail is by far the importance, and that's across Europe. So we're fortunate in Germany to have a lot of well-coached guys, as it is, coming up through some of the youth programs and other organizations, and so it makes it the quality of ball extremely good out here. So it's been outstanding just seeing, just from year 1 to 2 here, how much better our league has gotten.
No doubt. And I mean, it's such an exciting time for football in Europe, Germany specifically. I mean, I truly believe that it already is starting to become a feeder system for higher leagues, CFL, NFL, that's only going to increase. You know, what I tell people that I'm talking to in the U.S. that don't really know much about international football is that German teams, European teams are finally starting to invest in their youth sports, which is producing a whole nother level of football players that will end up probably playing college football, will end up playing professionally in Europe. So the time is now for football over there, man. It's exciting.
Absolutely, man. I mean, just look at Swibbers Hall. You know, a lot of their players are right from their own program, just going up through the rankings, and that just shows you, man, what can be done. You know, obviously people know about the Moritz Boehringer situation. I think he played 1 or 2 years with Swibbers Hall, and next thing you know, he's getting drafted. You know, so the attention definitely is starting to take place out here. Not only from a professional standpoint, but colleges. You know, we were fortunate this year. Philip Tobsdorf, who were able to get to a D1 AA school on a full scholarship. There's another gentleman working out there, Brandon Collier, who's getting several guys opportunities through universities. So it's not only just from a professional standpoint, but some of these younger guys that have aspirations of playing in college, man, it's starting to happen, man. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and so, Coach, talk on for people that are watching that aren't in Europe, that don't know about coaching overseas. You know, what would you tell someone about your coaching experience? Has it been valuable for your life? And you know, what are your plans for the future?
Well, first of all, man, when it comes to coaching overseas, number one, you got to be patient. You have to be patient. You got to be willing to adapt. And I think that if I've seen it before, if you're not willing to adapt and you can't, really, subside to the different, situations you're dealing with from being, in America to overseas, this is not for you. But just being able to adapt to differences, to a different culture, and really understanding that, they know football, but, there's so much more that they don't. Just because of the lack of time that you're really able to spend, having 2 practices a week, we're used to 4 to 5 practices in the States, not to mention weightlifting, which is something you do 4 to 5 times in the state as well. So you get here just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, being patient and understanding that you have to really be able to pull out of the guys what they do have and build on top of that. So as a coach, you can't come here with the mindset of being in the States where you have all these supreme athletes and, guys have been playing football since they're 5. These guys, some of these guys haven't started till they were 16, 18. So just understanding that you have to adapt to the differences, not only in being in a complete different country, but knowing that from a mental standpoint, they're not going to know as much as you're used to. As far as my experience, man, it has been very fruitful. It's been awesome here. Having my wife with me, obviously, has been great. And, having her by my side to help with some of the things that, I might not be able to do from coaching has been awesome. And just the experience in itself of being in Europe, of seeing Europe, that's something that I'm sure a lot of coaches, when they come over, are, just astonished by of how beautiful the other country is. Some people are not in a lifetime able to get outside of the U.S. So to be able to come into a whole other country, do what you love, but yet really help build other guys, young players, and build their knowledge of the game, which is my main reason, honestly, for coaching, period. Is to put across the knowledge that I have from the years of football and being under awesome coaches, but to really also help them even when it comes to being a man. Those things, those experiences are priceless. As far as my future plans, man, right now it's about the Hurricanes. That's all I'm worried about. That's all I'm focused on. And like I said, I love it here. So all those inspiring coaches out there, man, you got to make sure that this is for you. Because like I said, I've seen it before where some guys took it just because it was another job but couldn't handle the geographical differences. So you got to be willing to adapt.
Excellent. Well, and my last question was going to be, what do you want your legacy to be, as a coach? And I think you touched on it, but let's just reiterate what you kind of just said.
Man, if I would say what my legacy would be, is that I was a coach that really helped not only build them as a player, but as a young man, because that's what life really is about when it comes to sports. I tell people all the time, football is more than a sport to me. It really helped me become a man, and one thing about sports in general, if you look at, in life, guys that have graduated, that have played sports and things of that nature, a lot of times they're pretty productive in life just because sports teach you so many things. It teaches you a competitive edge. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you responsibility. It teaches you discipline. And some of those things that I've been able to be blessed to be a part of in my lifespan of playing ball, is some of the things that I want to be able to come across have not only spoken, but actually showed it, because obviously we understand actions speak a lot louder than words. So, my legacy, I'm not about wins and losses. Fortunately we are winning, so that helps. But it's really, man, about, who I was as a person, you know, and I don't want to be that coach that was, you know, as arrogant. It's not about the guys, because I tell you what, man, that's my first and main job is to make sure it's about the guys and the coaches, man, and putting them first. You know, me last, those guys first. You know, obviously as a head coach, you get some of the spotlight and all of those things, but it's not about that at all. You know, at the end of the day, man, it's about helping these young men not only become great football players, but better men.
I love it. I love it. Well, Coach Herford, thanks so much for being on. We wish you the best of luck against the Mercenaries. I'm excited to meet you in person in London in October, and we will stay in touch, man. I'll be watching the game next week.
All right, Will, man. Thanks for having me, man. And this is definitely an honor to work with you guys.
Excited. All right. Take care.